to the Shop, episode 233, a conversation with Anthony Ragler of Black and White Coffee Roasters. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio. I'm your host for the show, and I am really thankful that you decided to join me today because I think today's conversation is absolutely powerful. It covers so many amazing topics, and I just really am jazzed about this conversation with Anthony Ragler today. So excited to share that with you. I would like to encourage you to subscribe to Keys to the Shop if you have not done so already. And if you have the opportunity to leave a rating or review for the show, that would be awesome as well. I think a really good thing to do is to share this episode with a friend. It's a great way to spread the love and also helps the podcast gain visibility, helps these ideas get out there. Lastly, here, I want to remind you that Keys to the Shop, on top of doing this podcast, also offers consulting. If you need clarity for your business, you want to elevate the operations, you're getting ready to expand your business and open a second location, or you're planning your first store, there are many ways that Keys to the Shop can come alongside you and help you with these projects, gain the clarity you need, find solutions for problems you're having, or just get started on the right foot. Historically, that means either over-the-phone consultation, in-person visits and training, operational assessment, or both. It really depends on what you're looking for, and I'd love to have a conversation with you about that. So if consulting and coaching sounds like something that you'd be interested in, then I would encourage you to reach out, chris@keystotheshop.com. It's my email address, Chris, C-H-R-I-S, @keystotheshop.com. And if you want to know a little bit more information about that, over at keystotheshop.com/consulting, you can read a little bit more about what's on offer there. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Prima Coffee. Prima Coffee is just an amazing specialty coffee equipment supplier. They're based here in Louisville, Kentucky. I've known them since the beginning of their business, and they've always been about helping equip you, not just with equipment, but with the knowledge that it takes to be able to really take care of that equipment, make the right selections for your situation, and just to help you be successful in specialty coffee. And, you know, when you buy equipment, that's a huge chunk of the money that you've set aside for opening up your shop. And it's a big decision. You want to have a group of people that have not only scoured the globe for the best equipment they can find, but also can come alongside you and really provide some great assistance along the way. So if you go to their website, prima-coffee.com, you'll see the amazing selection. You'll also see the fact that they have a ton of resources, free resources for you to gain that knowledge about the equipment and making coffee, because again, they're all about seeing you be successful. So I highly encourage you, if you're after commercial coffee equipment, Prima Coffee is the place to go. Go to this link to find more information, prima-coffee.com/keys. Again, that's prima-coffee.com/keys. This episode is also brought to you by the world leader in plant-based performance beverages. Of course, we're talking about the Pacific Barista Series. It was designed for baristas. And not only was it designed for baristas, it was also designed with baristas. Some of the world's best baristas bench tested this stuff before it hits the shelves. Every time there's an addition to the product line, whether that's soy, almond, oat, rice, coconut, it is put into the hands of baristas that are giving them great feedback. And so when you get it on your bar, you'll know that it's a product that performs amazingly, stands up to the heat from steaming, produces texture perfect for latte art, and really produces a balanced beverage where the coffee is the star. And this is also critical for people who want a plant-based option that just wows them. And this is at Pacific Barista Series. So if you want to find out more information about getting this in your store, trying it out for yourself, go to their website, pacificfoodservice.com. You can just follow the link in the show notes. And again, highly recommend this to you. If you want the best in plant-based beverages for your shop, the choice is clearly the Pacific Barista Series. Okay, so today we have a really powerful conversation in store for you with the great Anthony Ragler of Black and White Coffee Roasters. And Anthony is a Brooklyn native, Brooklyn, New York, and is a coffee professional who combines his craft with his culture and upbringing in order to cultivate unique and individual experiences for the people he runs across in the coffee industry and beyond. He's worked everywhere from barista, wholesale manager, roaster, technician. All of those experiences have allowed Anthony to adapt and connect to many different people and perspectives within the supply chain and outside of it. Now, Anthony is a 2019 Glittercat Barista Bootcamp Cohort member, a 2020 United States Barista Championship finalist, and a 2020 RICO Symposium Fellow, and he currently works as the regional developer for Black and White Coffee Roasters in Wake Forest, North Carolina. And in this conversation, we get to dive into Anthony's introduction into the coffee industry, his progression through various roles, the lessons he's learned in that time, and how that's shaped both his perspective on the industry and his mission within the industry. And like I said, it's a really powerful conversation because it touches on so many amazing points about inclusion, about accessibility, hospitality, about service, and how to do really great work as a wholesale roaster and provider of services for your clients, and just how to be a great human being in the coffee industry. And I so appreciate his heart for making connections, building community, building inroads for people of color in the industry. And there's so much more here. So open your ears, open your heart, and get ready. Here now is my conversation with Anthony Ragler of Black and White Coffee Roasters. Well, Anthony, welcome to Keys to the Shop. Glad to have you on the show today. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me. How are you today?
Oh, I'm just doing fine. I mean, weather's nice. And we were talking beforehand, you're in the middle of hurricane season and you are brand new to the Durham, North Carolina area. Congrats on that. And how are you settling in?
Thank you. I am sort of new, but not really. I was actually born in Henderson, which is about 30 to 45 minutes out from Raleigh proper. So I've spent almost every summer of my childhood down here, and I'm relatively familiar with it. But living here and experiencing North Carolina as an adult and not as a preteen is definitely different than I remember. So it's a little bit of an adjustment, but thankfully I have a little bit of context to how things go down here.
Nice. So it's kind of a homecoming for you a little bit.
A little bit. It's a huge culture shock from living in New York of all places. But, it is definitely great. I am very happy with the decision to move and with the experience thus far.
Nice. Well, congrats again. And as we start a discussion here, I want to just start kind of at the beginning and hear about how you managed to find yourself in the coffee industry. And you've certainly been one of my favorites to watch in competition. And you've got a lot of experience working, and we're going to be talking about this later on the support, especially on the support end of cafes and roasteries. But what was the initial draw to specialty coffee for you? How did you get into this?
Okay, so I got into coffee the way 95% of people get into coffee, and that is completely by accident. I used to focus on my writing. So I used to do a lot of like music, poetry, theater, like screenwriting, stuff like that. And for a good while, I was doing like poetry slams and competing nationally in that. So in 2014, I was in the process of trying to make a national team. And there was a colleague that I knew through that process that just randomly one day put up a Facebook post and was like, hey, I'm looking for some people to work in my cafe. If you guys know anybody that's good, feel free to have them come in. They don't need to have experience. We're willing to train them. And at that point in time, it's 2014. I am 20 years old with a soon to be 2-year-old daughter, living in New York. And I am in the HR process of trying to get a job at Harlem Children's Zone, which is a charter school system up in Harlem, New York. And their system is very intensive. Well, their process is very intensive. So it took like 6 or 7 months from offer letter to here's my first day.
No kidding.
So I'm just trying to find something to supplement some income to, take care of a kid. And I just reached out. I was like, hey, yeah, I'm willing to come in. And I went in, I interviewed with them, and they pretty much were like, hey, if you work as hard as you compete, I'm pretty sure you're going to have the effort to be decent at this. So come on in, we'll do some training shifts and we'll go. What they did not communicate to me is sum equaled 1. So I had one day where I came in, I was taught how to make an espresso shot, how to close the shop, and how to work a register. And then they were like, great, cool. So tomorrow you're going to go close our other location. And it was a relatively small cafe. So they only kept one person on staff at a time. And this was a cafe that was open until 3 a.m. by NYU. So my second day on the job, I am by myself at like 6 or 7 p.m. right by Washington Square Park. I know nothing about what I am doing. And I am nervous that I'm going to screw something up.
Wow.
Maybe my second or third customer comes in, and this is a New Zealand and Australian inspired spot. We sold exclusively coffee and savory pies. So this guy comes in, he has the Aussie accent, and he's like, hey, can I get a flat white? And I'm like, cool. Then I go to the machine, and I'm like, in my head going, I have no idea what a flat white is. and the guy reads this completely across my face. He just sees that I am confused. I have no idea what I'm about to do. And he proceeds to teach me how to make a flat white from across the counter. And the story sounds fun and it sounds funny, but in that moment I was petrified.
That's traumatizing.
Right. So I'm just sitting there going, I have no idea what I am doing. And I feel really bad that this person is walking in here expecting a quality product, and I don't even know the product that I am making for them. So yeah, that's kind of like the early foray into how I got here.
So that's really what attracted you to stay in it, right? All that.
Oh, absolutely not. The thing for me is coffee was the absolute last thing that kept me here. So that West Third location of that cafe, which was by NYU, closed down maybe a month into me working there. The good news was I had recently started the teaching job that I was doing. And I remember one day getting a frantic phone call from my colleague from poetry, who's the manager of this cafe, going, we need to talk. I'm thinking I did something, I'm about to get fired. And he's like, no, we actually need to close down one of the locations. It's not making enough money. So hours are going to be cut a little bit, but we're going to have you come work in the Brooklyn location as much as possible. Now, this location is in Park Slope, so it's like a relatively affluent area of New York, but it's also right by Prospect Park. And Prospect Park is, if you're not familiar with New York, it's the second biggest park in New York outside of Central Park. And it spans a very long distance, pretty much from Park Slope to like near East Flatbush, where you come across a lot of different styles of people. So obviously one end of it is the more affluent area. And then the other side, for lack of a better word, is the hood. So we're in this area that is very diverse. And New York, I always say, is the most diverse, most segregated place in the world. So much so that you can get on a train, and it's a crowded train, and if you know you want a seat, you know who to stand in front of because you know what stop they're getting off at, even if you've never met them in your life. So we're in this area. It's clear that there are like Black and people of color families in this area. I am, in the 8-year history of this cafe at that time, the second Black person they've ever hired, and literally the only Black person in this cafe, other than someone that I asked to come visit me at work for months. And 6 months down the line of me being in this cafe, my friend goes, hey, I'm going to go to law school, so I'm leaving, but you've been doing a fantastic job, and I'm going to tell the owner that you should be the next manager. So I get offered this management position before the owner has ever met me. I've been there 6 months. I've been working pretty consistently, and I've never seen this guy. I get offered this position, so I'm 20 years old, about to turn 21. managing a group of people older than me, some with more coffee experience than me, some that have been at the company way longer than I have. And I'm just trying to figure this thing out. But the one thing that I do know is I feel very isolated and alone here. And the thing that I've constantly noticed about this cafe, as well as cafes in general, is this is a space where people come to feel comfortable. They come to do work, they come to do meetings, they bring their families there, they stop in on the weekends for treats before they go to the park. Like, this is a very ritualistic thing for people. And it's becoming apparent to me that the Black people in this neighborhood don't feel comfortable entering a space like this. And they really didn't start to do so until I became a manager, where I was seeing a lot more. And then also a lot of people that I hired were from more diverse backgrounds. They weren't just the same like Aussie white males that were coming in on 6-month visas. It was more people that were actually from the neighborhood and from the community and could kind of understand the different cultural influences that were happening in that space. So for me, the thing that originally made me stay in coffee was I'm in a space where I'm actually tangibly watching myself make a difference and allow people to feel like this is a space that they can also feel at home in. So just creating that true hospitality type vibe for people and to give them a space where they can have a home away from home was what I grew attached to. And being in Brooklyn and knowing that the typical experience for Black people with cafes is it's the first sign of gentrification. You see a cafe come up, that means everyone you know is about to get priced out of this neighborhood and they're going to move other people in. And feeling like I'm getting an opportunity to counteract that. That was what made me decide to stay in this industry, because it was something that I could see a tangible difference happening in real time, as opposed to this obscure thing that one day could possibly change.
Well, that's really great. I mean, that's kind of the way hospitality should work for, in the neighborhood where it's located. The people should all feel comfortable being in that space, right?
Yeah.
So you were there for, 3 years or so?
Yeah, about 3 years.
Okay, so you got your feet wet kind of in a tumultuous way a bit, and then you are in the mode of like, it's not the coffee keeping you in, but you're making a difference, and you want to continue doing that, obviously. So what's your next move to, because you kind of moved into a position of away from being a barista into more of a support role for cafes through wholesale and roasting from there. And so how did that kind of transpire, and how did you make a decision to leave that place where you were seeing that difference being made to continue to pursue coffee to a greater degree?
When you're working in a cafe and it's the only experience of the industry, the only thing that seems possible to you is being a manager and like running a shop or owning a shop. Those are the only visible routes for you to take within the industry. Mm-hmm. And I got to be a manager very early into that. So my ceiling, or what I thought my ceiling was already hit. And during the time that I was a manager, one of the things that I realized is, okay, I need to be able to lead by example. And that means not only leading from a space of knowing the logistics and knowing the mechanics and doing the things that show that I can like just maintain a shop, but I should be very knowledgeable about the product that I am serving. So the cafe in question was a counterculture account. And I decided I was going to start taking the courses to get my counterculture certification. At that time, the educator that taught the majority of my classes was Tamika Lawrence. And one, it was refreshing to see another person of color in coffee. But two, it was really the first time that I got to see someone have a career in coffee that wasn't a barista. Like that like their main position was not, hey, I make coffee to sell and serve in a cafe. Even still, I didn't necessarily feel like there was a route for me, but that was the first time that I got to see something else was possible. I ended up leaving that cafe and spinning my wheels, kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do with life just in general. A lot of stuff, a lot of personal stuff was going on, and I decided to pick up and move to the like Washington D.C. area. So at that time, I started working for another cafe out there. I was pretty transparent with them up front and was like, hey, I would love to get into some other roles that's not just being a behind the bar barista. I want to learn more, I want to do some things. They pushed me into being a shift lead and helping to like start opening up other cafes with them. But I wasn't really taken out of my primary role of being a barista. I ended up leaving that job. And then my next job is kind of where things changed. I started working for Vigilante Coffee, which is in Hyattsville, Maryland. So it's 10 minutes outside of DC proper. It's in another pretty historically Black and person of color neighborhood. So even though I'm a New Yorker and I'm not necessarily familiar with the way things go in this area, I am getting to see an area that feels familiar because it feels kind of like living in Brooklyn. So I started there. I was very transparent with the owner at the time that I wanted to learn as many things as possible because at the time I thought my ultimate goal was to open my own cafe. So I was like, hey, I want to learn all the roles and all the things that I can here so that one day I can be a cafe owner and run my own coffee company. And they were really receptive to that out the gate. Got to spend a lot of time with the owner and like chill and talk and kind of get to know their philosophy on things. But I was primarily working as a barista. At the time that I was there, like in the very beginning of it, their production manager of the past 5 years was getting ready to transition into roasting. And they were giving the promotion to another person by the name of J.R. Harris. And Black person who pulls me to the side one day and is like, hey, look, I see how you work here. You work really hard. I think that you'd be really good at the role that I'm supposed to take, but I'm getting ready to move down south with my family. And I haven't told them yet, but when I get ready to tell them, I would like to give them an alternative for someone that can fill this role. And I would like that to be you if you're interested. So getting the production manager role was my first step out of day-to-day barista operations. And it's something that I'm extremely grateful for. JR knows he's one of my closest friends because of that. And I've always been greatly appreciative of it. And what that ended up doing was it put me in the role of learning how the production department works and how we fulfill orders for wholesale clients. And then during the time of that role of me training, I'm expecting that's going to be the only role I'm doing. Once I get officially given the title, like literally in the meeting that I'm being told, okay, you're no longer intern production manager. You're now the new production manager. The previous manager, the one that was moving into roasting, goes, great. Now that you have this role, I think it'd be a good time to tell everybody that I'm quitting. And we're all just in the meeting like, whoa. So it's like, we thought we only needed a production manager, but now we need a roaster. So I kind of foray into that. Then it's also like, hey, you should take over billing and wholesale site visits and becoming like a real wholesale manager. And I start taking on that too. And then the thing that happens in most really small companies happens where you have like 7 job titles.
Yep.
And all of them were kind of in the realm of support. So that was kind of what pushed me into support roles, but it also helped to like facilitate a lot of the desire to continue the hospitality thing that I developed as a barista and transform it into a space that's on a bit of a higher scale and less like day to day of it, but more so like macro perspective.
Okay. So talk to me a little bit about that idea of transferring the hospitality that you learned from working behind the bar and managing a shop, and also the passion that you had for creating a more diverse hospitality experience, and how that translated to what you found yourself doing in a support role. What were some of the things that you saw transferred pretty well and created a little bit of a, I don't want to say gave you an edge, but where you could see yourself making a difference because of your history in coffee and the mission that you personally had to make a difference?
Well, I think the first thing for that was I came into coffee not liking or caring about coffee.
Mm.
So I had the perspective of understanding that this isn't as important to everyone else as it is to me. And what I mean by that is when you're working in a coffee company, your primary goal is to create a great product. And that is a very important facet to being able to run a successful company, having a product that people can believe in and product that people enjoy. But what happens is you end up finding out that not everyone has that same priority. The same way that you as a barista who may be really proud of the cup that you just made, you may get some people that want to sit there and have the deeper conversation about where the coffee came from and who farmed it and how you roast it and all of the like intricacies of coffee. But you also get the person that walks up to you, yo, let me get a latte. Let me just give me a drip. Like, and doesn't care what they're getting. And you as a barista have to learn how to tailor your approach to people based on the signs they show you of what experience they're looking for. So that was the first thing that translated to me in a support role of being a wholesale manager, which is not everyone's looking for the same thing that I may prioritize, and not everyone's looking for the same cookie cutter standard package of service. So you have to get to know people and listen to them and find out what they prioritize and what's important to them. There are some places that just want to make money. There are some places that want to have a close relationship with their supplier and know what they're serving and why they're serving it this way and the best way to curate an experience and things of that nature. There are some people that they just have different perspectives, and you have to know how to tailor your approach based on what they're looking to get out of an experience. So putting that in perspective was the first thing for me. The next thing was that I had to understand where my values lied. And for me, what brought me into coffee was the idea of cultivating community, especially for people that look like me and come from my background. And as a person that was taking in new wholesale inquiries and working with existing clients, one of the most frustrating things was running into so many people that didn't necessarily care about the product and didn't necessarily care about the community that they were in. Like, opening a coffee shop was not their passion, nor were the people that they were serving their passion. They really are just trying to make money. And they're really just trying to have a business that, whether it's they don't want to have a boss, so they want to own their own thing, or they just found out that coffee is like this new wave of things that's making money, so this might be an easy business venture, whatever it may be, that was the way that they led. And I had to learn how to not internalize that and not feel like, hey, you're doing this offensive thing because you don't value this the way that I do. And it's learning how to put that into perspective of like, okay, I can be passionate about my craft. I can be passionate about the work that this team is doing. And when I approach this client, I can find ways to meet in the middle in a way that services all of their needs, but doesn't make me feel like we are compromising our integrity. So that was the next like really big step that I had to take in learning how to properly be in a support role.
Those are excellent points, especially if you're in a position where you get to see a lot of different forms of humanity. You know, where in being in New York, you were sort of in this pressure cooker, and your experience forced you to adapt in a service role in a way that a lot of people don't get to, because they work in a very homogenous culture, or they work in a homogenous neighborhood or whatever. And you know, it's hard to really gain that kind of insight into even wholesale accounts initially, when you're in a support role and you want to, you know, imbue some of these values on them, or even just encourage them. Like, where's the line of compromise in that, where, you know, they're looking to you for guidance, right? And you want to take them up on that. But then there's this line at which you have to say, okay, well, it's obvious that they don't want any more from me, so here's where I'll stop. How do you discern where that is?
Well, the first thing is if it's not my company, I don't get to determine that line. Like if I am not the boss of the company, I have to defer to the person that is and go, hey, what is your comfort level? What are you looking for? And if my job is to facilitate your vision, how do I do that in the manner that works for you? Are you more concerned about making sure your product is properly represented? Or are you more concerned about making sure you keep this account? And then also putting that within the context of which account it is, because sometimes people are willing to compromise for the right number. People are willing to compromise for the right exposure, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the first thing. Secondly, like I said, not internalizing it, not making it about me or my work or making it directly a reflection of my work. The product and the quality in a space where I don't control all of the facets of it isn't a reflection of my work, but the way that this account and the way that the people that I am encountering at this place are feeling about me and the service that we give them, that's the direct reflection of my work. So to be a very prideful person and to want to do a good job, sometimes you have to realize the good job is that you made the person feel good at the end of it and they walked away satisfied. It's the same thing where, like, if someone comes up to you and goes, hey, can I get a scorching hot latte? The barista in you may go, no, that's bad. But you have to do the thing that they ask for, because what's the true reflection of your work is that you processed the information they gave you. You met the task, you facilitated what they were looking for, and they walked away from it satisfied. They walked away with the thing that they were asking for and paying for. So that's kind of the thing.
No, I love that. And it seems like we're, as an industry, we're kind of in that mode a little bit more than we used to be. And maybe we've been there for a long time, but the echoes of our third wave past continue on, where we used to really chide people for their choices of putting sugar and stuff, and the coffee bars that opened that forbade people from having things that they were used to having or that they even served before to the customers. So we were gatekeepers in that sense. And I don't know, sometimes I think people still haven't forgiven us for that.
And understandably so. To be quite honest, like, people are not going to receive your intentions well unless you come to them with your hands open and you go, hey, look, I'm not weaponizing this thing. I am not slighting you or judging you for experiencing something differently than I do and not liking what I like. And I try my best to point that out, because that's the feeling that a lot of the people from my demographic feel. Like, that's what Black people have felt often. That's why I think back to my grandparents, and my experience with coffee before I ever entered the cafe was my grandparents drank Folgers and Taster's Choice every morning. And we had some coffee mate and some sugar and maybe some cream, and did the things. And my idea of what coffee tasted like is not what I learned coffee tasted like in a cafe. And that isn't any less valid. Like, you don't look at someone who is a street artist and tell them that they don't have any talent because they're not drawing Picassos.
Yes.
Like, you have to contextualize and understand that all of these different forms and experiences are valid, and someone is appreciating it. When you create a culture that is telling someone what they like and what they believe to be true does not exist and it is less than, they're not going to be willing to receive whatever you're presenting to them as quote unquote better. So that's why a lot of people aren't going to enter the cafe if they feel like they're going to be dehumanized and belittled for not liking what someone tells them they're supposed to like.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're at that point, see, you're not serving them, you're just serving yourself.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And so
it becomes a vanity project.
Yeah. There's still a lot of those. But when we're talking about, you're now into the support role pretty heavily, you get to see the back end of a lot of different cafes, and you're getting a little bit more familiar with the industry itself and all the different iterations of cafes and the professionals in it. And I'm curious to know, what your perspective was as that world started to open up for you and you saw the way that coffee bars were run. As a professional, you're a professional, right? You're not going to just you're not going to what's the word I'm looking for? Just lay it all out there verbally. But you're going to have some thoughts about stuff in your own head about what you've been seeing in the industry. And so I wonder, how are you thinking about this broader industry now that you got sort of like the behind the scenes of it through your own production roles, and then supporting other people's back end of their coffee bars?
One of the things that I've always held on to is we give too much credit to ourselves. The majority of the marketing and the communication about why this is important to us and why you should enjoy a product and why you should pay a certain amount to experience it is rooted in the conversation of the supply chain. And this was the first year that I competed. This was kind of the theory that I was working with, which is I think we're focused on the wrong end of the chain. We're talking about the supply chain, but not so much the demand chain. Not, hey, here's how we make sure you feel appreciated and value this thing. What I used as my example is in New York, we have a bunch of bodegas and corner stores. And one of the things that I think about with corner stores is they don't really sell anything too expensive. And like, yeah, nowadays, some of them have like upgraded and gentrified themselves to kind of fit the new influx of people that have moved in. But the cultural experience that I have of corner stores is the person behind the counter knows me very intimately because I live in this neighborhood and they pay attention to me and they know about how I'm doing in school and they know my parents and they're asking those questions and they're having these conversations that personalize my experience with them to the point where I am emotionally invested in their success. And you're not going to close down my corner store because I'm going to spend money here every day, because not only do they have something that I need, they're so important to me that I need to get it from here. And it's this thing about, if we're creating that type of environment for people where they feel emotionally invested in us succeeding, they're going to ensure that we do. So when we talk about why something's important and why we should put a certain level of emphasis to it and why we should price it the way that we do, I tend to focus on how this affects the person experiencing it. Not, hey, we have the best product, or hey, we do it the best way, because that's arbitrary. But how I make you feel in this moment and the experience that you have from me being the person to deliver this to you should be unparalleled. And that's the same approach that I like to use with wholesale and with any type of service. Like, I want you to go, no. I want this from you or from your team because you have made this an individualistic approach that I can invest in. And when we come across the people that don't want the individual approach and they just want things simple and easy, you've made this seamless for me and I didn't have to jump through hoops to get a thing done. It was simple, it was attainable, it was approachable. So trying to find ways to make my hospitality experience digestible and wanting that to be the thing that we ultimately push across the industry so that more people are wanting to enter. And by enter, I don't necessarily mean as professionals, but as people that indulge in the product. And when you get more people to do that, you can eliminate a lot of the scarcity issues of, we're not getting enough volume, we're not getting enough people to walk in the door, or we're not getting enough people to buy from us on our online store. Like, you make them want to be there and they'll be there on their own.
You open up the doors, you are providing for your own sustainability as a business, but upstream in the value chain, it's like you're also providing for the entire industry when you open up the doors in the cafes so that people have that, what you're saying, connection. There's this connection with your community down to the point where, like you said, when you first became a barista, you notice more people start coming in because the representation actually mattered. Is that what drew you to competition? Is that what, like, putting that message out there from your experiences in the industry, was that sort of the catalyst that made you want to get on stage and, kind of scratch that competition itch again as a spoken word artist as well?
Yes and no. A part of it was that I hadn't written anything in a really long time, and it was a good way to write in a longer form and be able to speak in front of people. But yeah, I've always had a competitive background, and it's funny. I love competition because of the fact that I believe it showcases people striving to be the most perfect versions of themselves. Like, when you are competing for something that you care about, you are trying your hardest. You are pushing yourself to do something that you aren't sure if you're capable of. And when competition is done in a pure manner and not in a destructive manner, it's pretty much just getting a room of people being their best selves in one space and just trying to showcase that strive, that reach to be that. So that's always been why I've been so appreciative of competition. So, like, I played basketball as a kid. I did step in high school. I've played a bunch of sports, music, singing, then poetry. Like, a lot of that stuff led to that competitive itch of mine, but it's also a competitive itch from the space of wanting to be in a room with a bunch of people wanting to be their very best. Like, I'm not the type of person that wants to win by default. Like, I would rather lose to someone that is just better than me in the given moment than to win because people were not their best versions of themselves. So there's that side. There's also the fact that when you work in coffee and you're not really, or when you work in any field and you're not really connected to the greater industry, you just know the place that you work at, you don't necessarily have the context of how proficient you may be. So I can't say that I am a good barista or that I know that I am doing this thing right until I put myself in the place with all the experts and find out where I actually exist within that spectrum. So it was like, I don't want to go somewhere and be this arrogant or really headstrong person about my own capabilities and skills. I want to be able to go into these spaces and find out, hey, do I actually know what I'm talking about? So that was one of the ways for me to figure that out for myself. And then there was okay, I haven't performed in a while, and this is a great way to express myself and also talk about this thing that's important to me about the industry that I'm making my profession in a space where people are going to hear it. So those are the things that led me to competition. I really only planned to compete once.
That's the way it goes.
Well, I mean, I'm out the game now, two and done. I'm glad, but what ended up happening was I'm the routine that I did this past year, the Black Panther themed routine that talked about just the existence of being a person of color in the coffee industry, was the original routine I wanted to do my first year when I was still working for Vigilante. When I went to go do the qualifiers, I pitched this idea to my boss, and he's like, this is not likable enough. People are not going to want to hear what you're going to say. You need to change this and sound more smiley and likable. So I changed the routine and had the corner store conversation and talked about focusing on the demand chain and things of that nature. And I did well. I came in 8th in my very first year, and I was happy with it. Sans the fact that I caught potato defect in semifinals. But other than that, I felt really satisfied with my showing. What I didn't feel satisfied with was the fact that out of all of the coffee competitions in the US that happened that year at nationals, I was the only Black competitor.
Right.
And I remember saying to the grouping of people that were supporting me at the time that I don't plan to compete again because I don't want to be the loudest voice in here for us. I don't want to be the diversity. I want to encourage diversity to happen. So I don't want to be here as the token Black person that gets up there and talks about the Black issues and everyone celebrates it because I'm the only voice in the room doing it. So I had decided at that point wasn't going to compete again. Lim Butler, the 2016 US champion, who is now one of my bosses. We met during that competition season, slightly like on a slightly different note. But at the end of that season was like, hey, are you coming back? I told him no. I explained why. A couple of days later, he shoots me a message. He's like, hey, I really think this industry needs your voice. You should come back. And I still was like, nah, not really. Then I got a job where I was helping to create a specialty coffee program in Salesforce's New York City tower. They asked me to pick my wholesale provider. I wanted to go with Black and White. We made that happen. And then one day during the process of onboarding them as our wholesale provider, Lim's like, hey, so we need to have this conversation again, right? You need to compete one more time. I'm like, all right, I'll do it if I can do this routine that I wanted to do that people told me was unlikable. Like, if I can do it and I can just have 1 year where no one is telling me what I need to say or how I need to say it, and I can just like have full creative freedom, I'll do 1 more year to get this one regret that I have about the season out of my system. And he's like, yeah, go ahead, let's do it. And Lim and Kyle and Sam Lewington and all the other people that were a part of my team of helping me craft this routine had to deal with me sounding like a crazy maniac trying to explain this idea. And I'm like, hey, look, it's going to make sense when it's all on paper. But they were patient with me. They gave me time, and it looks like it worked out well.
Indeed. And it was definitely an amazing routine. And I so appreciate that not only you putting your voice back out there, but also the sentiment of originally not wanting to be the loudest voice, and you were in a support role and you were just really honing in on that support role, and that transferred over to even this, like wanting to encourage the diversity, to be the support, to be the momentum for that. And I think that's a really great quality. And it's evident in the way you talk about your customers and the people you serve, in the accounts that you serve, and the community that you're a part of, that this is something that is really deeply part of what your mission is in the industry. So I really appreciate your perspectives and how you've stepped out into those roles, both with your work and in competition. So kudos to you. Our community has gotten a little bit stronger, I think, in some ways because of COVID, because of the fact that we can't do certain things. We're forced to sort of communicate with each other in different ways, and we're reflecting on the nature of our relationship to one another and the nature of our relationship to the customers, as we haven't seen them in a long time. So the perspective of really serving people through these means is so relevant. And I know a lot of people are trying to figure out how to kind of lean into that a little bit more, and make those connections, and something that you've done so well. And I wanted to just ask if there's some advice that you would have to people who are maybe they're setting up wholesale programs, they're wanting to be a support to their customers and to their clients, their wholesale clients, and do it in a way that's going to make that connection actually serve them well without the pretension that we're kind of known for.
I think the first thing is being clear about what your mission is. And if your mission is to grow and just to grow and be successful and make money and have all of the security within the world, it means you're going to have to interact with people that are not like-minded, that do not have the same perspectives or same priorities. If your mission is to be a beacon of excellence and to showcase that you have the best product out there, you have to be understanding enough to know that to be the best is arbitrary. And it changes from moment to moment, and it changes from person to person. So you have to be clear about what you want, and if what you want is for you, then you need to make sure that you are interacting with people and meeting with people that want that same thing. and not trying to force your intentions or force your vision onto someone else. Mostly all of these things are just components of listening, are mostly components of making sure that what you are offering is being received in the way that you intend it to be, and to make sure that you are actually hearing out the people that are looking for your service and making sure that you give them what they're asking for and not telling them what they want. It's like the pretentious barista that sees a person come up that they don't think is a coffee professional and they ask for an espresso, and that barista decides to serve them a latte because they think that person doesn't know what they're talking about. Listen to people, believe they know what they want, and give them what they are asking for and not what you decide they want. You can't speak for a person that has their own voice, and you can't be the voice of communities or clientele that can already speak for themselves. Allow them to tell you what they're looking for. You can present your perspective, but do it humbly. Come to them with that level of communication that shows you are willing to listen before you are willing to just cast your perspective onto them.
That would build a better relationship with them anyway. You'd probably have them as a client a lot longer. And I feel like this is true. And I wonder if you've seen this, where wholesale providers, roasters, can tend to favor certain accounts because of the optics, really, because of where it is in the city, because of the money that they have, and they leave some of the other accounts to languish. And I feel like that might be something that the industry could do a bit better with. Is that something that you've seen?
Oh, absolutely. That happens on both ends, like even certain wholesale clients have specific vendors they care more about based on either what they're serving in their establishment, or the relationship that they've built, or how important they think a product is. Like, there are places that will look at their dry goods supplier more important because their packaging is such a big thing, or they're looking at their food supplier because they believe food is a more intricate craft than coffee is, and are willing to let coffee go by the wayside because it's not as important to them. And that's the same thing on our end. There are coffee companies that provide coffee roasters that provide coffee to other well-known coffee establishments because they believe they're going to represent their product properly, or to a place that has enough money to pay for all of the various different goals that the roaster may have, or there's a friendship between the owner of the coffee roaster and the company they're supplying, and they find ways to give special treatment, which special treatment isn't bad in itself, but special treatment at the detriment of other people that you have come into an agreement to do justice by and do right by is where the problem lies.
And I would imagine that same problem of somebody coming into a cafe and saying, well, this isn't for me, would look similarly at a roaster potentially and say, well, this roasting company is too high end for me. There's no way that they would support me. And it seems like we're cutting off access to being able to support people who are smaller, who want to get into coffee, who want to open coffee shops and businesses, and that the optics, again, like they're looking at this thinking that it's unattainable for them, and so it seems like roaster accessibility is just as important as cafe accessibility.
Absolutely, because in that same breath, those same companies that want to have a roaster partner and feel like they'll be alienated by a third wave company, they're going to go to somewhere that may not produce as good of a product, but is more approachable and probably cheaper, and also probably less alienating, just off the fact that they won't degrade them or diminish them. And then there are these third wave companies that'll look at that and look down on them and go, oh yeah, they don't serve good coffee because they serve it from X place, or they really don't care about it. It's like, no, maybe they did, but maybe they felt like you or the collective you were too pretentious to want to give them the time of day. It's just like how there are Black people and other people of color that come into these cafes and go, nah, they're too snooty for me. They're not going to treat me the same way they're going to treat the white person that comes into the cafe, because they think that that person is more valuable than I am, and therefore will give them better service or treat them with a little bit more care and patience. And those are the exact things that lead to people not wanting to even embrace you, because the characteristics you're showcasing are ones that are signs of alienation.
Opposite of what we're trying to do theoretically
Right.
in coffee is the opposite of hospitality, right?
Yep.
When we're talking to people who are in charge of creating the system that everyone operates by in the roastery and how the brand is represented, what are some practical ways that, like, after this conversation, they could go and say, okay, well, here's some steps that we can take to sort of create a more service oriented, like, we're in service to them, we provide them coffee, but beyond that listening, beyond that, like, what do they do to create a more accessible wholesale program where they can support all of their customers well, and take steps to open up their possibilities?
I think the first thing is looking inward. I think one of the most beneficial things to me understanding the roles that I have been fortunate enough to occupy is that space where I worked in a small company that gave me like 7 different job titles, because at some point in time, those weren't all my job titles. Like, at some point, there was someone else doing the job in some way, shape, or form. And what I had to do before I could so-called revamp a system and make it better is I needed to learn from the people already in place of what they're experiencing, what that day-to-day looks like, and what my role that may affect their role, what role I can play to make their life easier, make their job easier, make them feel more content with their day-to-day. And that's like, if I'm working as a wholesale manager or production manager that is responsible for getting the roast list to the head roaster and making sure everything gets packaged and out the door on time, I need to communicate with the production team and find out the things that they need in order for me to make sure things are done right. Communicate with the roaster to find out that I am presenting information and asking for things to be done in a way that is really easy and attainable for them. Then I'm also looking at my wholesale manager role and going, okay, I need to know how to present all of these things in a way that the customer is receiving it in a time efficient manner. They're happy with the product. They're happy with the service that they're getting, and trying to streamline each of those different things in a way that ties it all up for everyone. So that's the thing that I had to do internally, as far as just like the logistics of it. And that's kind of the same thing you have to do with your clients, making sure that your logistics are in place so that they're getting the like actual tangible service right. As far as the emotional and the personal and the things that allow you to be able to preach the right type of message, is you got to look back at what it is that you're saying that you're doing. And if you're preaching excellence, are you preaching it from a place where you are talking down on other people? Are you preaching it from a place where you are putting yourself on a pedestal? Like, if you're going, we preach excellence and we provide the best product and all of these other companies do not, you are already behind the 8 ball, because you're not coming from a place of accessibility. You're coming from a place of elitism. You ultimately want to start from a place of being humble, start from a place of always trying to be better and always knowing that better is possible and exists in some way, shape, or form, no matter how well you think you're doing things in the first place. But then you are responsible for keeping people around you that are going to hold you accountable to that task. People that don't look like you, people that don't think like you, people that don't come from the same background as you, so that when you are getting down to the end of the chain and you're dealing with wholesale clients, you're dealing with customers, you're dealing with people that are not already ingrained in your culture and your experiences, you've had enough people vet how you were interacting and how you are presenting your product and your product and your work, and presenting it in a way that invites as many people as possible in.
You can sleep a lot better knowing that you've cared for all the people involved in your own little microcosm of a supply chain, the way you described, which I love, that you're making sure you're caring for the people that are packaging the coffee. They often get forgotten about and they're stuck in the hot roastery, and production it's not an easy task. Roasting is not an easy task. And sometimes our wholesale and our roasting arm of our businesses can kind of grind people down. And so I'm really happy to hear that this is a key for success in this, is to make sure that every person in this whole thing is cared for, including your customer, of course.
Right. If one of the biggest conversations we end up having about owning a business or running a business is that employee turnover is such a high thing and it's so expensive, it's coming from the fact that there are people that are not feeling as if this is worthwhile for them, whether it be it's not a sustainable enough living, whether it's they're not enjoying the work experience or the people that they're interacting with at work. There's always a focus on the things that they are seeing and feeling that make them believe they are unappreciated or undervalued. And if we put value on people and we start at valuing them, most of the other things can be worked through in time, because there is a level of trust that is happening between the parties that goes, I trust this person's intentions. I trust that they are willing to work with me and listen to me and empower me to be able to speak up about things. And therefore, I can hold the space to communicate. I can hold the space to actually voice what it is that I want and that I need, and not just walk away from a thing.
Indeed. And that is catchy too. That's the kind of culture that you also end up giving, whether by training or by osmosis, to your wholesale customers, because they learn that from your cafes. They visit there, and if you're not practicing it, they won't do it. But if you are, they're just going to be like, this is the way. That's how we make change, right?
Right. And also got to remember, people are intelligent. So people will see when you are faking that. People will see if you are spitting a company message at them. It's much different when it's like, no, I actually believe in this. No, I'm not saying this because I'm being paid to say this, or because this is what I've decided this place means if I'm like the owner of the company. It's no. We genuinely believe this from the top down, not just in verbiage, but in action. We show this in our everyday steps, and we continue to edit it and not decide that these values that we put in place are like completely stationary and will be the things that and will never change. Sometimes your values change, sometimes your method to reaching your values change, but if you present it properly and you are constantly striving and doing the work, it will be noticed.
Amen. That's great. And, I'm curious, my last question to you here, and by the way, this has really been such a fantastic conversation. And I love your heart for your customers and for the community. Truly, we need a lot more people in the industry like you.
My goodness, thank you.
What do you really hope that the industry will look like in 5 years? And what do you want your legacy to be as a part of that?
What I hope the industry looks like is what everyone says they're trying to be, but the statistics and the testimonies behind it have shown that we're not. The focus on equality and values and acceptance and all of those things that pretty much everyone says because it sounds good, that it's actually done, that it is actually across the board what happens, so that when we have these conversations about people or companies not doing right by by the people that they are impacting. Those are anomalies, and those are things that are responded to with genuine actions. It's like, no, this is not acceptable in our space and not up for debate, and not something that blindsides us because we try to ignore the fact that anyone could possibly be actively harming people or things in this space. So that's kind of what I want at the end of the day. I want there to be more access for people from different backgrounds and perspectives to be welcomed in, both as customers and as different aspects of the supply chain and in the profession. Because for me, I didn't know anything was possible other than managing and possibly owning a cafe until someone showed me it. And there are a lot of people that leave this industry before they're shown there are other possible routes that they may have loved and may have been interested in, because people weren't inviting and welcoming to them when they were here. So valuing people at the absolute base of it. My impact, I just want to be a good person. I just want to feel like people trust me to do the right thing and are comfortable correcting me where I am wrong, and doing it from a space of going, no, we believe in you and believe in your potential to continue doing right by us and right by the people that you encounter. So we're going to hold the space to be patient enough to help to teach you and help to push you in the right direction. I can try with my moral compass to do as best as I can, but honestly, I am one person in one perspective, and I'm going to always be learning. So as long as people trust me to be willing to teach me, I think I'm making the right impact.
Well, it's evident that you've made a pretty good impact so far, and I'm thankful for that and what you're going to continue to do with Black and White and beyond. I am really thrilled again to have had you on the show. And again, great conversation. Thank you so much, Anthony. It's been a pleasure.
Chris, thank you for having me. Yeah, this was not only a great talk, but also it did a lot for me in the sense that I'm getting to say out loud a lot of the things that I've been thinking and mulling over and reassessing for myself to, constantly do better, because better is not a goal that it's not a finish line. It is always moving, and you are always striving towards it. And you're always pushing towards it. So yeah, it's helping me keep putting things in perspective. So thank you for allowing me to ramble in front of you for an hour.
My pleasure. Thank you, man.
Oh man, thank you.
Well, one of the many things that I appreciate from this conversation is the theme of approaching what we do with humility and with a mindset to listen and learn and serve the individual rather than ourselves. And that kind of an approach is seen in all these different facets of what Anthony shared today. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, we know there's lots of different areas where we can improve in that. And we might be able to point to different aspects of the coffee industry where they are in a bad state, maybe because things were not approached from that perspective. And it's a fantastic goal to have in all your interactions. It really speaks to mindfulness. And particularly right now in coffee, I think it's very valuable for us to think how we present ourselves as professionals, as businesses. Is this alienating or is this welcoming? And how far out have we really thought of that? Is it only welcoming to one group of people, one socioeconomic group of people, one ethnicity of people? We need to make sure that we are generous with the way we present ourselves, generous with our view towards others. We talk about this a lot with charitable assumption. And I feel what Anthony has shared here today has really tapped into something deep. And it's where we need to plant ourselves if we want to see positive momentum and change in the industry. And like Anthony said, to be the thing that we say we want to be or say we are, truly in all the ways that it counts. So a huge thank you to Anthony for joining us on the show. We really appreciate your wisdom and your insights, Anthony. So great. Thank you so much. Now, I've included a link to Anthony's Instagram in the show notes. Also, there's a link to Black and White Coffee Roasters there. And I've also, in the show notes, as usual, and this might be a reminder for other episodes, I'm always trying to give you some recommended episodes that are related to the topic of that conversation or that episode. So in this one, there are 5 episodes that I've recommended listening to, and there probably could be more, but it might be good to explore some of those episodes too in order to kind of continue the conversation and embellish on some of these ideas that Anthony has put out there. So don't forget that we have that in the show notes, those recommended or related episode lists. And if you want to get in contact with me, you can just email me, chris@keystotheshop.com, either for inquiring about consulting and training, or if you just want to give me feedback about the show and tell me how I'm doing, how is this show impacting you and your business? I always love to hear those stories. And with that, it is the end of our show. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.